So the past few weeks that you've been on, you've been talking about that again. Not like the majority of black men are voting for Trump, but you've been seeing some significant inroads with black male voters in Trump. Again, nothing extreme, but a bit higher than what you may have saw with McCain and with Romney. But now you told me that there's some new data that is actually showing there has been a shift. So at least maybe somebody in the Biden campaign is listening to you, listening to me, listening to Karen
That's
Hunter,
right.
listening to Roland Martin, maybe Joyanne Reed. I don't know. But you're saying there has been a shift in some new data. So tell me if this is really important. Tell me about that.
That's right, Clay. So, we've been paying a very close attention to Donald Trump and Republican efforts to attract black men. There seemed to be some efficacy of that. There seemed to be that they were making some progress as we saw black men's support from Trump increase from 13% that he got in 2016 up to 18%, even amongst younger black voters, black men under 50. And 18% to your point, that's not a majority. It's not even close to a majority, but it was enough increase along the margins to make us very concerned in places like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Florida. And that was his plan all along, right? Was just to make some marginal increases. But recently we've been polling, not just asking people who will you vote for, but also polling who have you voted for, as we've seen that almost half of black voters have actually casted votes already. And there's something fascinating happening here, Clay. One is that Donald Trump's support and approval from black men still seems to be about the same, that 13 to 15%. But amongst those that have actually voted for him, it's as low as 7%. And so I
Mm,
think what we're seeing is that
that's lower than
there are
McCain.
black men. Yeah, it's fascinating. I think what we're seeing is that there are black men who are disaffected with Democrats, with disaffected with the system, and supporting Donald Trump because they just kind of are cynical toward the system. But that cynicism is also the reason why they are less likely to vote. So there's still a lot of black men saying that they like him. Not a lot, but there's still about 15% of black men saying that they like him, but a lot less black men actually casting votes for him.
So that's interesting. It's one thing to say something in a poll, but it's another thing to what you're going to actually do in the voting booth. That's why, for me, Terrence, I've been hearing these narratives, these polls that Biden is making inroads for the first time in about 50 years, a Democrat with white voters, according to the polls. And I'm like, I'll believe that when I see the votes. You know what I'm saying?
That's
I'll
right.
believe it when I see the votes. I mean, let's not forget, Bill Clinton did not win the white vote. Jimmy Carter did not win the white vote. The last person who did was Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964. Barack Obama damn sure didn't win the white vote, right? But they still managed to
Right.
win. So that's really important what you do when you talk to a pollster versus when you get in that voting booth. But let me ask you, I mean, that's a good difference. But what do you think it was? What do you think it was that may have made these black men, I get at 7% versus in a poll, say, you know what? Actually, I mean, to me, I didn't need any convincing. But was it more
Right.
ads? Was it how horrendous Trump has been? Was it you're seeing Biden and Harris more on the ground? Was it President Barack Obama being out there? What do you think is the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's been a shift in priority here. I think that the campaign is giving a lot more attention to these voters. I think you've been doing a great job ringing the alarm here, and I appreciate you having me on the ring the alarm here. So I do think that they are focused, laser focused. They're a bit closer, but also you know, I think the reality has set in that while there are black men who are distrustful of the system, who are cynical towards both parties. And Donald Trump represents this disruptive force, right? He's disrupting the system that they don't think has delivered for them anyway. But those men are just a lot less likely to come out and turn out. And so as we get closer to election day, we start screening. This is one thing we do in polling that could really change the taste of your soup, is who you screen in and who you screen out. We start screening a lot more tightly. And what that means is we ask you early in the poll, how likely are you to vote? And if you are not very likely to vote 5 to 7 days out, we stop asking you questions, because at this point we need to talk to people that are going to vote, that are going to engage.
Mm.
And so I think that that's what's happening, is that the black man that is a Trump supporter, that's above the typical 8% of black men that are just Republicans. that those were just people that were cynical towards the system, and that because of that cynicism, they're actually a lot less likely to go and cast their votes for him.
All right, so to your point, we all know while folks say the majority of black folks vote Democrat, I always say you got to look at that number when it comes to turnout. If only 50% of black folks are voting, and out of that 50%, only 50% vote Democrat, that actually really isn't that impactful. So in 2016, we only had 59% voter turnout. That was, I think, a 20-year low. Do you think what you're seeing that we're going to have higher voter turnout this year?
That's right. In 2008, we saw historic turnout for Barack
That's right.
Obama's first campaign, where black turnout reached over 65%, 67%. Black women became the most likely voters in America, and it really was a turning point for black political participation, and the likes of which we hadn't seen in a very long time. I'll be honest, Clay, with what we're seeing in early vote and in vote by mail, I expect black turnout to exceed that. I think we're going to exceed the historic levels of 2008. In Georgia, black voters over the age of 60 in Georgia, there's already been more of them vote in early vote than they did in the entire time in the entire 2016 cycle. And so we're seeing this overwhelming surge. I'll be honest with your listeners. Black seniors are my favorite kind of voters because I know they're going to vote and I know who they're going to vote for. So, so I like to see them overperforming. And we're seeing that all over the country. Pennsylvania has seen record turnout. I think it was 300% higher than it was in 2016 in early vote. And so, the black folks are really on guard. I'll call it voter vigilance, because of what Donald Trump has done from that podium and threatening to disenfranchise people. Black folks, voter vigilance has increased. We're turning out at record numbers. What's interesting there, Clay, is that's a part of why I also think we're going to see a lower percentage of black men supporting Trump, not because there's less black men voting for Trump, but because there's so many more black people voting against Trump, that the
Right.
share of his vote is much smaller this time. And so, yeah, I really do. I think black voters are showing up and showing out and really, really going to defend the values that they just see under attack from this president.